Greetings, my fellow streamers, sovereign thinkers. This is LL3's Realism podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy Mangwood, South Florida. And today's date, Saturday, August 5th, 2017. And yeah, just warm, pretty hot, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of interesting things going on as usual. Plus, I'm at CJ's Java Lounge located at 400 Southwest 1st Avenue, Suite 1 along the New River of Fort Lauderdale, which is in the Yacht Club. New River Yacht Club to be exact. Southwest section of the Andrews Avenue Bridge. Yeah, so I'll be going to mainly be talking about a couple things, not a whole lot of stuff, because I know some of my shows, a couple of my shows have been over an hour, but I've been getting some hits, and I thank you for taking the time to put it out, and hopefully everyone will be sharing it. That'll be awesome as well. And this came out, I'll be talking about the Seth Rich murder mystery, and it's very close to being solved. Dave Hodges from the Common Sense Show, and put this out on before it's news. And of course, everyone thinks they're, fake disinformation and all that. However, the site, anyone can put something up there before mainstream news gets on there. So it's more like a open social media source for people who want to be journalists and all that. But always observe responsibly. And it's interesting here because talking about the Seth Rich murder, and I know I was talking about yesterday about Debbie Wasserman SHULTZ, and things are getting, they could say, really heated up now. She made a claim that it was Imran's laptop, not hers. Well, it looks like she's running amok, and of course in the Sun Sentinel made a statement that she knew what she was doing and this and so forth, and claiming he was a Muslim. You can check that site out off the Sun Sentinel, and her office, like the Sunrise office, which is warehouse, I call it the industrial district of Sunrise, which is a lot of warehouses and all that. But yeah, you just look it up. It's obvious. So we're going to actually talk about the Seth Rich mystery murder. It's very close to being solved, and I'm going to actually I'll play you a track off from the Dave Hodges show, which is in fair use to be exact, because people have the right to know what's really happening, and there's so much good stuff out there, good information. Of course, you got the bogus ones as well. People make these claims, they're infiltrators, they're provocateurs, this and that. A lot of it's baseless. This is what I always tell my listeners: observe responsibly. Okay, don't just focus on base value. Go further ahead, and to make things make it better, better judgment for yourselves. All right, so let's just check this out here. The Seth Rich murder mystery is very close to being solved. And this is interesting here. There's a website, whokilledseth.com, and there's a $130,000 reward. Do you know who murdered Seth Rich? So let's check it here. As late as yesterday, this came out yesterday to be exact. I felt as if I had Tigger by the tail, and that Tiger could turn my back on me. As I began making the rounds over the past 2 days, more people, e.g. FBI, State Department, and some independent media, very clear, and I thought at the time a very dangerous scenario was beginning to emerge. Knowing what happened to Breitbart and Hasty, I became almost paranoid, but certainly hyper-vigilant. Over the past 48 hours, my fears diminished. As it turned out, there were several others who knew what I knew, but the details have flown in by the moment. Seth Rich case is ready for serious investigation, followed by an honest, fact-based prosecution. Several people have elements of the same information that their sources are differential. So I'm confident that they are not repeating the same rumor. Who is Guccifer 2.0? Although I'm now hearing the infamous Guccifer was an Obama-connected DNC operative from very private sources, the Still report is reporting the same thing. I was told by a deep cover source that Guccifer was an artificial creation of Podesta operations designed to take attention away from the damage that was done by the Seth Rich leak. Now, I am in agreement with Seymour Hersh that an original contact between Seth Rich and WikiLeaks was only introductory and centered around proving authenticity and arriving at a price. Everyone I agree with believes with the original email sent by Rich were motivated by revenge against Clinton stealing the primary election, as many as 16 different states, and Rich wanted to get paid for his efforts. Was Seth Rich correct? Did Hillary Clinton steal the Democratic primary? It almost seems that the details about the murder of Seth Rich are being filled in by the moment, as more facts are coming to the light all around. A 2016 Stanford study post-Democratic primary report strongly indicated which only used electronic voting machines gave Hillary Clinton a 9% advance over Sanders in the Democratic primary. The pattern was too consistent to be due to random chance. The Stanford study demonstrated that pre-election polls accurately predicted election results when a paper ballot was used. However, when accountable electronic voting machines were used with no confirming paper trail, Clinton exceeded expectations by 9%. When one runs the odds on this being due to random chance, the odds are nearly incalculable. What adds the fuel to this fire is that two major manufacturers of the voting machines, Dominion Voting and HIG Capital, are large Clinton campaign supporters. I remember reading about the fact that it's illegal to engage in such a flagrant conflict of interest. The criminality oozing out Clinton never stops. Here is a 3-minute coincide simulation of Clinton got away with voter fraud against Bernie Sanders and how it was predicted at the time that she would do it to Trump, which she did, because we are now seeing estimates that many as 20 million illegal votes were cast, e.g. illegal aliens, Democrats voting multiple times, and adjacent states, etc. The evidence is so convincing, it is easy to see that Clinton actually lost her own primary election, and probably lost to Trump by at least 12 to 15 million votes. Stunning revelations about Guccifer 2. New information is surfacing which shows that Guccifer 2 is the DNC and the source trying to frame the Russians for collusion in the 2016 election. It is important to establish a time, however, before presenting these criminal events in sequence. It is important to note to that date, no FBI investigation was ever conducted by the FBI until an assistant sorry about that. Assistant Federal District Attorney, Assistant DA Branton J. Wainwright Jr. was found murdered, killed by a blunt force trauma from behind. Federal prosecutors was murdered in Wasserman Schultz's district and would care to speculate what he was investigating. Yet another Seth Rich-style murder, Realism Jr. was looking into the DNC emails connected to voter fraud. Coincidentally or not, the murder took place in the Wasserman Schultz congressional district. Even federal employees are not safe from these people. Please ask yourself a question. Does this event alone not deserve intense law enforcement and major media attention? A federal prosecutor has been murdered who was looking into DNC emails connected to voter fraud, and that is layered on the top with Seth Rich murder. The thing about that, there was a video on there on this link as well. We've got 2 video links. So the first one, like I said, very interesting, and about this whole thing about what's going on with Seth Rich and all that. So you can watch it, you can check that out. But I remember a friend of mine sent it to me on Facebook on this incident. So it's getting a little bit too sloppy, I would say, right? The timeline, whoever claimed to be Lucifer 2.0 is more likely than the Warren Flood, a former DNC and White House employee. The Microsoft software and subsequent release of information on the DNC data dumped to WikiLeaks saying the Russians hacked the election and Trump was involved actually registered to Flood. In this congressional testimony, James Comey admitted that the FBI did not look at the original DNC email servers. Emails and server. Would any competent investigator have started with this evidence? Comey could not look, but Reisenheim did look, and he was murdered. Comey left that a little deal out of his congressional testimony. We know that the DNC framed up the management of the DNC servers to a company called CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike is the source of the Russian collusion allegations, most of which has been proven to be false. Flood was also involved with both CrowdStrike and the DNC. Seth Rich was murdered on July 10, 2017. On what? His valuables are still on him. Sure about that? 2017? I thought it was 2016. So a little bit of an accuracy here. Right? Yeah, a little bit of an accuracy, guys. On July 14th, DNC announced it had been hacked at the Washington Post, where the cover story attempted to validate the story with unnamed sources. On July 24, 2017, David Wasserman Schultz resigned as DNC chair. She shared the same server as a leaker Seth Rich. She took the falls for the leaks. One of John Podesta's favorite comments of intimidation is to make an example of, he reportedly said, the same with regard to the DNC leaks. Podesta cannot have it both ways. CrowdStrike went on to record and said the WikiLeaks email leaks came from the Russians. How would Podesta make an example out of the Russians? That is a silly interpretation. Podesta is clearly referring to an individual, and that person, I believe, was Seth Rich. Another figure enters the equation at this time, and this is the DNC chief researcher, Lauren Dillon. Dillon has access to all the servers of the DNC. From speaking with several sources, I believe it is likely it should be investigated. Dillon coordinated a set of data dumped to WikiLeaks with misleading information to take Assange off of the trail of Seth Rich. May I have spoken with tell me that they believe that Lucifer and CrowdStrike were used to circulate the false Russian narrative to take attention away from Seth Rich murder. Lauren Dillon named appears in some of WikiLeaks emails. This is explored in more detail in the last video presented in this article. In the late July 2017, the Alwan brothers are implicated in the destruction of the subpoenaed emails, obstruction of justice, and the destruction of hard drives, and possibly another pertinent material, aiding and abetting as well as obstruction. The Alwan brothers were paid millions of taxpayer money and remain on Wasserman Schultz's payroll until the arrest. Does this implicate Wasserman Schultz as a conspirator to commit obstruction as well as aiding and abetting? As the previous covered on the Common Sense show, David Wasserman Schultz's brother, Steve Wasserman, killed the Seth Rich murder investigation. Wasserman Schultz's brother is also in charge of investigating and possibly prosecuting Alwan. Talk about the fox watching the hen house. This is one big mafia criminal enterprise that needs full exposure for all to see. Before we have any chance of reclaiming our republic, we need to educate the ignorant on the nature of the mafia that is running large segments of our government. Murder on the Orient Express. Do you feel like you're reading a political version of Murder on the Orient Express? Unlike the movie, there are multiple suspects that fit into a pattern of criminality resulting in the murder of the Seth Rich and the subsequent cover-up. So what we have learned, let me use the detective word. This is speculative, but the speculations are supported by direct and circumstantial revelations. 1. I would target all of Podesta's emails. If he's implicated in the murder of Seth Rich, he has proven himself to be sloppy enough to left breadcrumbs needed to prosecute. 2. The entire murder of Seth Rich and the subsequent murder of a federal prosecutor stems around voter fraud. Every DNC email and server should have already been inspected by the FBI, but remember, we're still talking about Comey. 3. which is revelations took place on Wasserman Schultz's watch. She was clearly paid to destroy evidence in reference to the Alman brothers. Her federal DA prosecutor brother has run interference for her not once but twice. She is guilty of obstruction, and this would be easy to prove. She would make a deal to get out from under the mess. 4. Wasserman Schultz is clearly protecting Podesta given the threat he made. Ultimately, Podesta is protecting Clinton from implicated in the Democratic primary voter fraud. 5. Who hired a hitman that actually pulled the trigger? This too will come out in time. This information should end all Russian allegations against Trump. The president needs to aggressively pursue changes in this matter and bring Hama Abedin and his ex-husband, former Congressman Anthony Weiner, to provide testimony on what specific Clinton emails were transferred to their respective servers. Abedin and Weiner would be prime candidates of turning state's evidence. What does it say about our justice system and our major media when only true investigation is going inside for the independent media? And this is why Google's YouTube will soon be banning all independent media journalists. Here's a short computation of these facts to share on the social media platforms if they will allow it. And I have to agree, it is very sloppy in good faith on what's been happening. I like that. Murder in the Orient Express. I like that. Was good. If you haven't read that book, that's a classic book. I think they made a movie about it too. I don't know how far it follows the book, so I'm not gonna make any reviews on it. But yeah, Who Done It? That's the name of the game. Remember that TV show, Who Done It? So I'm not the only. So Dave Hodges is not alone. A lot of us, like-minded individuals, are like connecting the dots little by little without actually listening to the bobbleheads in the mainstream media. This is how I see it. And I am pretty convinced right now it's gotta get close. I don't know how. Well, I don't know. In due time. I can't say overnight because I'm not going to jump to that conclusion. But I'm pretty convinced this can be resolved, and and the people will be prosecuted and convicted under judicial due process. And so, is Deborah Wasserman Schultz the prime suspect? Yeah, but she's not. I don't consider her the mastermind. I can be very frank on that. It's another patsy, like John Wilkes Booth. If you study the history of the Banksy, you understand that. But I don't want to go out of this area. So what I'm going to be doing is going to be talking about the Seth Rich. Just added one more prep, which is by Dave Hodges. So you check it out, and just it'll be like 10 minutes, like a little under 10 minutes. So here it goes. Enjoy.
Hi, this is Dave Hodges of the Common Sense Show, and we're the show that's freeing America, one enslaved mind at a time. I feel like I really got a tiger by the tail, and that is a long, long tail because this tiger could turn back on me at any moment and basically have its way with me. And that's how I feel about the story that I'm ready to report. This is blockbuster news, although I will say elements of this report have appeared in other places in the last 2 days on the internet, and this leads me to believe that the leaks coming out of the FBI may be purposeful, designed to obscure the real facts. In other words, if you know a leak is coming, a data dump is coming, you dump your own data and you make it of such a volume and you make it close to the original leak, but then you have so much material that leads people away from the truth, it confuses the public. That's what I believe we're seeing here. Let me get down to what I'm really talking about here. What I'm talking about ultimately is the murder of Seth Rich. What I'm ultimately talking about is the fact that Seth Rich did indeed send emails to WikiLeaks. That's undisputed. Seymour Hersh has now picked up on this, and this famed journalist has said unquestionably this is true. It's no longer we think he did it, we suspect he did it, we know he did it. But there's another shadowy figure that enters into the arena of controversy here, and her name is Lauren Dillon. And Lauren Dillon is clearly the, how do I say this, the controversial pivotal figure here in this particular information. The Still report covered an element of what I'm going to give you now, and I know this is true because I've had it confirmed by a source of mine that is connected to Intel activities. And what the Still report said, essentially, and it's very, very correct, is that when you open up some documents using a different kind of editor than the format that it was submitted in, you can see all kinds of information, such as who sent the document. Some of the WikiLeaks documents have Lauren Dillon's name on it, not Seth Rich. Isn't that interesting? Now, Seth Rich did send documents. Now, remember what I said. When you know a leak and a breach has happened regarding very sensitive material, you flood that with disinformation to obfuscate the truth. This is what I am convinced that Lauren Dillon, the DNC researcher, did do. Now, here's what's interesting. Let's look at timing. Seth Rich does his data dump. It's discovered, obviously. Lauren Dillon does her data dump to obfuscate Seth Rich's data dump. In addition to this, we now see that Debbie Wasserman Schultz was shown the door in this same time frame. And right on the heels of all of this, you've got John Podesta. You have to wonder if he was sober when he said it, because it was a stupid, self-implicating statement. And he said, let's make the leaker pay. And a short time later, Seth Rich is dead. These are the facts as they're beginning to pile up, and I'm beginning to find confirmation, not from just my sources that have to remain anonymous for obvious reasons, but now we're seeing other people access their sources, and they're finding the same exact information that I am finding. Now, I want to sum this up, because I believe this may be the story of the week. We've got Seth Rich, according to Seymour Hersh, and many, many others, including myself, that are telling you he released information as a payback for the fraud against Bernie Sanders and election fraud committed by Hillary Clinton's people in the DNC, and he exposed this to WikiLeaks. His data dump was discovered. Lauren Dillon, the DNC researcher, was brought in, and she submitted massive data dumps too, designed to obfuscate the truth behind Seth Rich and make it confusing. And this would explain some of Julian Assange's, shall we say, reticence in committing to saying who sent what and how much. I can see now how he'd be confused, because I kept thinking for many, many months, come on, Julian, you know that Seth sent you this stuff. He did. It wasn't the Russians. It was Lauren Dillon overriding Seth Rich and trying to confuse the issue. Debbie Wasserman Schultz departs, not of her own free will. Podesta issues a threat. Seth Rich is murdered. Now, if we can figure this out from afar, and if other people like the Still Report did an excellent job of putting some of this together, if they can figure some of this out, then where the hell is law enforcement? Well, I can tell you where law enforcement is. Who killed the Seth Rich investigation? And you who follow my channel already know the answer to that question. What was that, you say? Oh, that's right. It was Steve Wasserman, Assistant Federal District Attorney, killed the investigation. Who is he? The brother of Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Isn't that interesting? And now that the Awan brothers have been busted, and one of them is under arrest, and we know that they were committing obstruction of justice on behalf of Debbie Wasserman Schultz, guess who's in charge of that investigation? Again, you would be correct. That person is Steve Wasserman. Does it get any more convoluted than this? I mean, if we're not living under a criminal enterprise, I don't know what you would call it. This is absolutely, positively blockbuster news. This is something that needs to go out on your social media. It needs to be spread far and wide. Even if only 10% of this is true, and I'm telling you, I really believe 100% of this is true, but only if 10% were true. Isn't this enough to start more investigations and criminal indictments? And when the House Judiciary Committee says that they're going to go after Comey, Clinton, and Lynch, shouldn't Wasserman Schultz be expanded into this and add John Podesta on there as the olive on top of this drink we call a screwdriver? I think so. Well, that's it for the Common Sense Show for now. And as I said in other broadcasts, and this is bearing repeating, I don't know how long we're going to be here. My good friend Lisa Haven basically made the same impassioned statement. So has Mark Dice. We are in deep, deep trouble in the independent media with regard to YouTube because they're going to censor us, because even if we don't violate their platform rules, they can censor us, and they've turned us over to the ADL. The ADL is compiling a hit list, and they publish some of these names. I hope that the people whose names are published take legal action against the ADL. You know the Southern Poverty Law Center is going to be involved. So, people, we need to formulate a plan. Certainly we can't let YouTube benefit from this. And even if I didn't have a dog in the fight, what I'm saying to you quite clearly is this, is that YouTube continues to play games, their fake boycott, and then we also have the situation where, you know, the views that I get on other sites with my videos outnumber collectively the views I'm seeing on YouTube. So in other words, let me explain this. If I have a YouTube video in an article on thecommonsenseshow.com, and that article gets shared with Before It's News and Steve Quayle and Revolution Radio, when you see these kind of shares go on, and I have 1,300 websites that look into thecommonsenseshow.com, so when these videos go out, the aggregate number of video views exceeds what YouTube says I'm getting by about 10 to 100 times. So you know that they're playing games with viewership. They're already limiting us. Anyway, that's another story to get into for another time. The reason I'm telling you this is because in each video I'm going to mention this, because we need to arm ourselves and decide what we're going to do. Do we go to another video site? Do we launch a campaign against YouTube's sponsors the same way that they launched a campaign against us? If you want the truth, and I'm telling you right now, the truth is in danger. And we go back to this original story. My gosh, what a world we live in right now. This country is being run absolutely by the mafia. These people are the deep state mafia. And the deep state mafia trumps any other mafia, no pun intended. So let's roll up our sleeves. Let's get to work. Let's make this go viral. Remember, we're brought to you by Numana, best storable food company in the world. Go to numana.com/Hodges. Use the coupon code Hodges, NOV5, to take 5% off.
Yep, that is true, my friends. Absolutely true. He made a lot of great pointers about Lauren Dillon, and of course, dumbed down Debbie's brother, Steve Wasserman, for dropping the investigation. So, can he be in that loop too? Steve Wasserman for prison campaign? I can say that. And this is a fact about what's going on, too, with the independent news media as well. They're being on the Anti-Defamation League's hit list. I've been hearing about it, and I'd be very sincere. I learned about the Anti-Defamation League when I was like 21 years old, okay? First time I heard the name, I did a little looking into them, and I was never really impressed. They're nothing more than the New World Order entity. Because here's the thing. You know where their main headquarters is located at? The UN Plaza in New York City. So it's in international jurisdiction. Think about it. In the United Nations building, the ADL, or Anti-Defamation League. Plus another thing as well, I have to say is about Abraham Foxman. He is a bald-faced coward because he never took the initiative on challenging the late Aaron Zellman, founder of the Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership. Mr. Zellman wanted to challenge anyone, including him, on a debate which is based on militias, gun control, and Judaism. Abraham Foxman didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. Maybe 3-foot pole. A 10-foot pole, I would say that. So that proves right there that Anti-Defamation League is just another contemptuous one world order establishment. That's right. Nothing more than ginos running that facility. You know what a gino is? A Jew in name only, or Judaic in name only. And that's not being anti-Semitic. That's my saying about the Anti-Defamation League. And definitely, folks, take the initiative on looking up the ADL hit list. And it's very very discouraging. I could be with all honesty. They're like the Sovereign Poverty Law Center. Hatred and division is their business. So next I'm going to be discussing pertaining to Debbie Wasserman Schultz. This came out. Saw a video on this, and this is from BehindTheTyranny.com. It came out a few days ago. It says here, Trump must put Debbie Wasserman Schultz in protective custody now after the latest bombshell. Her life is in danger. And I have to agree on that, to be with all honesty. Even though I was very critical of Debbie Wasserman Schultz, saying she's less patriotic than Benedict Arnold. However, I know, like I said before, just another patsy with her hands dirty. So we'll just continue on here. This person is called Elder Patriot. It can now be reported that current Congresswoman and former DNC head Debbie Wasserman Schultz served as Hillary Clinton's conduit for the transfer of highly classified and top-secret information to the Arab nations funding the jihadist movement. After the discovery of her private email server closed that avenue of decimation. For this reason, if for no other reason, she should now be under protective custody. Well, I can say this about the Arab nations, all part of the One World Order agenda. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer told Tucker Carlson guest host Laura Ingraham when the Capitol Police rolled in and said there's something wrong here, and the FBI's rolled in and let me give you this big takeaway here. It looks like Foreign Intelligence Service may be the recipient of all of this and something called the Muslim Brotherhood. Wasserman Schultz didn't arrange this by herself, though it is likely that the Clintons did without her knowledge. In fact, we reported more than a year and a half ago, on January 13, 2016, that Mrs. Clinton left no stone unturned with her desire to sell whatever she could to assuage her greed. Many of the emails suggest the quid pro quo agreement with foreign governments where major contributions to the Clinton Foundation would be made in exchange for favorable treatment from her as Secretary of State. You can read that correctly. Foreign governments were bribing the Clintons in order to effect favorable treatment for the otherwise anti-U.S. request. John Jay would be rolling in his grave, okay? And George Washington as well. That means that entire time, the entire intelligence community and Congress have been working to protect the Clintons for reasons that are now becoming clear. Anyone who knows how these things work knows that anyone who muscles in on a criminal enterprise does so as his or her own risk. The term arkancide was coined specifically for those who crossed the Clintons. Wasserman Schultz was the Clinton hand-picked successor to run the aspect of the family business. Now they have positioned Wasserman Schultz to take the fall for their violations of the Espionage Act. The advantages of this arrangement for the Clintons should be obvious. Wasserman Schultz became their stooge in the event their treasonous but incredibly profitable scheme unraveled as it is now doing. We already have ample evidence that Wasserman Schultz has long served the Clintons' criminal enterprise in various capacities. As the head of the DNC, she colluded with Clinton campaign operatives to circumvent the will of Democratic voters to install Hillary as their presidential nominee. She also used her position as head of the DNC to collude with FBI Director James Comey to block the investigative agency's access to the DNC server and the emails from the public disclosure in the defense of the Clintons. All this makes her the linchpin that holds the knowledge of many, if not all, of the Clintons' vast web of criminal activities. One thing is certain at this point, her involvement in the sale of highly classified national defense secrets in the violation of the Espionage Act can no longer be denied. And this gives honest investigators wherever they are leverage to gain information from her. How else can her massive overpayment of the Iran brothers and their families can be explained, especially now that we have learned they are acting as agents for the Muslim Brotherhood, another New World Order entity? Yes, I can say that. It's my show, and there's enough merit to back it up. For this reason alone, Wasserman Show should be placed under protective custody and ordered immunity if she's willing to open up about what she knows about the Clintons who have already planned her Arkansas. Offered immunity, but I understand when I'm not really too keen about that. But let's see how that's not my priority to make those decisions. All right, I'll be very sincere. She knows she will not be safe anywhere with what she knows. Explain her erratic but revealing behavior in threatening the chief of the Capitol Police. Here's Wasserman Show threatening the chief, is what clearly an attempt to obstruct justice. Her desperation is obvious. Of course, there's videos on that too, so you can see it for yourselves. And I am not impressed at all. Wasserman Shows clearly realize she's a dead woman walking if the contents of her laptop ever become public, and probably even if they don't. Aside for having Wasserman Shows to serve as a fall gal, there were additional benefits that inured to the Clintons. The Clintons were able to keep their pipeline with the Arab states that was funneling tens of millions of dollars to the foundation and tens of millions of additional dollars to the Clinton campaign chest open. And if their scam eventually got exposed, they had others to blame, like these 30 Democratic congresspersons that hired the Iran brothers for IT services. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Marisha Fudge, Tim Ryan, Jim Costa, Sandra M. Levin. This is all Democrats too, just to let you folks know. Yvette D. Clark, Gregory W. Meeks, John P. Sarbanes, Jackie Spear, Deanna DeGette, Frederica S. Wilson, Cedric L. Richmond, David Lowe's Back, Karen Bass, Joyce Betty, Emmanuel Cleaver, Lois Frankel, Daniel T. Kildee, Tony Cardenas, Mitchell LeJean Graham, Robert L. Kelly, Catherine M. Clark, Mark Tanako, Pete Aguilar, Andre Carson, Jacqueline Castro, Theodore Dutch. Yes, that's my so-called congressman in my district. Ask him about that too. I'm not the only one, I bet you. Ted Leor, Hakeem S. Jeffries, Christine Senneman. Once Wasserman Schultz convinced the 30 of so Democrats to give the Iran brothers unfettered access to America's national security secrets, the Clintons owned them all, thereby ensuring their compliance and silencing and obstructing any congressional investigation into their involvement once the Trump administration began scrutinizing Congress's reluctance to move forward with this America First agenda. Prior to the November election on November 3rd and again on May 19th of this year, we reported that how the Clintons have similarly tainted many other elected and appointed officials through bribery, extortion, and threat of character assassination. There is enough of her in the entire government to be brought down. People don't realize how enormous this whole situation actually is. This case would explode into millions of other cases if fully brought to light. And then we would be one agency competing against the entire government and horde of other interests. It's a very tense and uncomfortable position. FBI whistleblower with intimate knowledge of the Clinton email investigation. It is control over such a wide swathe of our elected officials that President Trump recently told America the swamp was worse than he has ever imagined and took to calling it a sewer. And it explains why virtually of all Washington is aligned against President Trump as they twist and turn trying to save their bacon. These include Republicans, as Newt Gingrich explained to Sean Hannity just the other night. There are a lot of Republicans who are afraid of the Clintons, that the Clintons will have so much landed power and have so many connections in the Washington establishment, they are just afraid to take them head on. And I'm not too crazy about Newt Gingrich, my friends, okay? He was involved with the Council of Foreign Relations, the Bohemian Grove. He's considered a one world order asset, and his freedom index wasn't really, as a congressman and all that, was unimpressive, okay? I'll just leave it at that. If Republicans who have a Republican president to protect them are this fearful, then when it does say about both their honesty and their involvement in the Clinton crime family, coupled with the FBI's agents' revelations about the depth and breadth of Washington corruption, President Trump had a difficult choice to make. Does he destroy the D.C. sewer and in the process render government so dysfunctional that none of his agenda gets implemented? Or does he do what he can where he can so at least some sliver of his agenda gets done? Pray for him no matter what his decision may be. As for Debbie Wasserman Schultz, she should be interrogated under bright lights for long as it takes to make her tell us that she knows. It will be incredible miscarriage of justice and an acknowledgement that government corruption is in the norm if she made to take the fall for all of this. And I have to agree. If they just like cut the line and let her sink and say, "Oh, it's all Debbie Wasserman Schultz," yeah, that will be a miscarriage of justice. I'm not going to argue about that at all. It's always a lot bigger than what it is. And this is why a person like myself, I can get really infuriated. However, I still have to do a couple of steps back to see things a lot more greater in dynamics. This has to be allocated honorably and in good faith, and bring them all in. It may not not going to be overnight, but step by step. But I can tell you this right now, my friends, the Clintons are wearing no clothes. Okay, I can say that. They are bare ass naked. And this includes Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Their little play toy. Girl toy, okay? So I could be very blunt on that perspective. And as for Trump, there's times I can smack him beside his head too, don't get me wrong. But there's a lot more than just him. This is why we watching the lamestream news. They're talking about the Russians this, the Russians that. All it is, my friends, is just a great distraction. So this is why CNN are desperately seeking ratings. And these other news stations are in the same pitfall. Pray for Trump, yeah, and anyone else that's involved that wants justice and kill this demoniac. Let's make this happen. Spread this word. Even if you have to go to the Wasserman Schultz rallies and call her out. Do it. Put it on video, because you as a citizen journalist has the equal amount of rights than the Sun Sentinel and all these newspaper companies. All right, so don't be afraid. They can't. If they say you can't record, go freedom of the press. Period. Including the Clintons as well. And I know too about the whole YouTube being censoring people. I've seen it. There's other places you can go. Spread this like everything else. Because one thing I know from my friends, the war on terror is a war with ourselves. Critical thinkers are considered terrorists, and that's what they're trying to use on us. So, yes, and I do believe Debbie Wasserman Schultz should get protective custody. If they can make a certain deal, so be it. But I have to say, in good faith, through judicial due process, if she's convicted, she has to serve her time. And one thing I'm very, like I said before, really feel sad for are the 3 children. Just to let you guys know once again, I don't hate the woman, but the actions I boldly condemn. That includes the Clintons as well. They're just examples. Whew. Okay, folks. I'm going to take a little break and be back. Okay. Oops. Sorry about that. Always have a habit of putting my mic up when I'm taking a break. So, next up, attacking the media isn't the right move. It's by Sam Rowley from PersonalLiberty.com. It says here the mainstream media has been less friendly to the Trump administration, but amid rolling leaks out of the White House, the Justice Department suggestions that reporters and journalists could find themselves in hot water for publishing leaked material is a danger to the First Amendment. During a Friday press conference, Attorney General Jeff Sessions and Director of Intelligence Dan Coats announced that the DOJ, along with the FBI and various other government agencies, are diverting resources to more proactively investigate White House leaks. Sessions told reporters that he has empowered the FBI to aggressively investigate cases involving leaks. A new FBI division, Sessions added, is currently being set up to deal with leak investigations. I have this message to our friends in the intelligence community. The Justice Department is open for business, Sessions said, and I have a warning for potential leakers: don't do it. Coase added that the government will stop at nothing to ruin the lives of government leakers. If you probably disclose classified information, we will find you, we will investigate you, and we will prosecute you to the full extent of the law, Coase said. You will not be happy with the result. While current leaks are causing a massive amount of frustration for the Trump administration, it's worth remembering that government leaks are sometimes very beneficial to the public good. And when reporters find themselves in possession of leaked material, the public needs to know about it. We certainly don't want them fearful of informing. There is no better way to make journalists fearful of doing their jobs and suggest that publishing certain material could put them at odds with vital national security interests, essentially making them enemies of the state. Unfortunately, Sessions' remarks Friday suggest that the strategy the Trump administration intends to use moving forward when something is leaked and that it doesn't like, it will use national security as an excuse to go after everyone involved. We respect the important role of the press plays and will give them respect, but it is not limited, Sessions said. They cannot place lives at risk with impunity. We must balance the press role with protecting our national security and the lives of those who serve in the intelligence community, the armed forces, and all law-abiding Americans. Sessions and the Trump administration really ought to leave journalists out of it. If they have a leak problem, it's because they have failed to purge the government of people working to undermine the administration agenda. In the White House, the buck stops here. Sure, the pretty sort of leaks coming out of the Trump administration are irritating and distracting, but if you're considerate, try to remember how you felt about President Barack Obama's attempt to target whistleblowers and leakers. Whether you support them or not, you should always want the nation's most powerful people to risk of constant exposure. We keep talking about Sessions wanting to take the U.S. back to the 1980s via a redo of awful drug policies, but the way things are going, perhaps we ought to be talking about the 1790s and the Alien Seditions Act getting a modern makeover. That is absolutely correct, my friends. Ooh, man, that is. Hopefully, Jeff Sessions will know about this, because the truth of the matter is, it is called freedom of the press. And to all you worshipers of Sessions, I'll just read. I'm going to bring back the Bill of Rights once again from the jpfo.org website. Very fantastic source to check out, and I'll give you the meaning of what it is. Okay, so I can read this on top of my head. I'm not going to be really concerned, but I'm going to read this right now for Jeff Sessions and his lovely supporters. All right, and it says here, government shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. What does that mean? Government can neither impose a state religion upon you nor punish you for exercising the religion of your choice. You may express your opinions, write and publish what you wish, gather peacefully with others, and formally ask the government to correct injustices. Hopefully General Sessions will be reading this. I think I should send this to him as well. Why not? He's got to get a clue. And of course, make it hit the 9th Amendment, natural born rights. The enumeration of the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed or denied to disparage others retained by the people. You have more rights than are specifically listed in the Bill of Rights. In other words, your natural born rights, including freedom of the press. So, sorry, General Attorney Sessions, you fumbled once again in that area. Hey, I was real critical of you on trying to do the whole thing on the civil asset forfeiture agenda, the platform deception, the sham that it is, and of course you'll do on the war on drugs. Talk about raiding other states to have recreational or medical marijuana honorable in their jurisdiction. You want the feds to get in? You know what? You butt out. Okay, so that's why I can be pretty critical. But this, my friends, I don't believe in left and right, but right and right from wrong. So I will definitely add that to the memo. So let them people to think. Yeah, you gotta think. You can't. You don't believe in thinking? Good grief. And here's one thing too. What Tom Jefferson said to James Madison in 1787. A Bill of Rights is what the people are entitled to against every government on earth, general or particular, and what no just government should refuse or rest on inference. Okay? So it's going to be, I'll leave that side up so people can read in different languages and all that good stuff. Okay? Alright, finally, this came out from the 10th Amendment Center by Rob Nettleson. What can we do about legal realism and its promotion of judicial activism? In the previous installment in this two-part series, I surveyed how the theory of legal realism came to displace the traditional views, laws shared by Anglo-American attorneys and judges. I explained that the constitutional provisions of the judiciary were drafted with traditional views in mind, but once legal realism began to dominate legal thinking, the judicial system no longer worked as expected. Legal realists encouraged judges to engage in activist behavior not anticipated by the Constitution. How, therefore, do we recapture our judiciary from the legal realist? First thing to remember is that our problem centers in specific institutions, American law schools, and the higher reaches of the judiciary. It follows that any solutions have focused on those areas. It is pointless to attack those not responsible for the damage, such as state trial court judges or lawyers generally. Hold on. Sorry about that. I will continue on here. One moment. Next, keep in mind, despite of legal realism and ivory tower theory, although one of its founders, Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., has substantially real-world experience, this is not true of most of those who spread the doctrine. These are mostly law professors with little experience in law practice, and even less in business and the economy. They often promote realist ideas because they pick them up in law school or because they think that what faculty in most prestigious institutions believe. These professors spread the doctrine through their teaching and law journal articles and other media. Any cure for judicial activism has to be directed not merely at the offending judges, but the legal opinion molders who encourage bad judicial conduct. On the other hand, You can't address the law school problems merely by firing every realist faculty member. They are protected by the First Amendment and norms of academic freedom, political reality, and American ideas of fair play. Here are some of the practical reforms. Each has the advantage of making sense for other reasons as well. Term limits on appellate judges and justices. A simple long term for each judge will encourage appointment of somewhat older nominees more tested and shaped more by experience than by inaccurate theories. Abolishing lifetime appointments probably would reduce judicial arrogance as well. In another post, I addressed the reason for imposing term limits on the U.S. Supreme Court. Choosing appeals court judges primarily from trial court judges and from experienced attorneys rather than from academic or politicians, aside from the occasional academic like attendance scalia, most appointments should come from the trial bench and from the ranks of outstanding practice practitioners. We should avoid appointing former politicians to the Supreme Court. They tend to become activists. Reduce the role of the U.S. court system. Nothing in the Constitution that requires Congress fund any federal tribunal other than the Supreme Court. In fact, among federal systems, Germany, Australia, Canada, etc., America is relatively unusual in having a complete national court system parallel to those of the states, although state judges sometimes are infected with the activist virus. I suspect it is more prevalent among federal judges. If so, it might make sense to pare back the federal courts and rely more on state judiciaries. Open up legal education to free market competition. Many states grant a monopoly on legal education to law schools approved by the Liberal American Bar Association. The states should permit aspiring lawyers to receive their education by the judicial clerkship method. They should permit law school accreditation by entities other than the ABA. Of course, the bar exam and associate license requirements should be preserved. Establish higher standards for law professors. The following is a typical resume for a newly hired law professor. Good grades at prestigious schools where most of the teachers lack real-world experience. A year or two of clerking for a judge or writing memos in a law firm not typical of practice generally, e.g. Wall Street firm, being hired onto a faculty. Obviously, a person with a resume like this is utterly unqualified to teach law students how to be good lawyers. Further, such a person is easy prey for silly theories. State authorities should require that law faculty has significant experience in what they teach, especially at state law schools. States require extensive experience in licensing our other professions, such as physicians, even for more skilled trades such as plumbers and electricians. Require fair hiring procedures for law professors. In addition to employing novices to do a professional job, law school hiring malpractice includes using politically correct criteria favoring certain ethnic groups and freezing out libertarian and conservatives. Law schools sometimes choose faculty with interest in fringe subjects, gender studies, over experts in subjects their students actually need, e.g. commercial law. This is the problem legislatures and boards of regents can address. Require law professors to engage in real research and publish their findings. Much of the research in legal academia amounts to writing articles that are just fancy briefs or prefixed conclusion. Often a prefixed conclusion is some leftist canard of the professor picked up as an undergrad. University law schools are not playgrounds for mental self-indulgence. They are institutions with graduate level status. Faculty research should be appropriate to that status. Thus, law professors should be required to produce genuine, objective, peer-reviewed investigations into the real-world subjects. Examples include the influence of historical events on law, how antitrust rules affect the economy, psychological effects on jurors, specific courtroom procedures, and the effect on crime of sentencing guidelines. The goal is to push back the frontiers of human knowledge and perhaps improve the legal system as a result. Some of the professors do valuable work of that kind, but most do not. If a professor wants to spend his day writing briefs arguing for constitutional rights for dolphins, then he should seek employment with a political advocacy group. He should not be taking up space on a research faculty. A common theme connecting all these proposed solutions is opening up the closet, letting the sunlight of fairness from the real world. This is a tested prescription for dissipating arrogance and theoretical cobwebs. The difficulty is letting the public know that the closet exists, and we need to open it. Absolutely. Good move there, my friend. I like that a lot, Mr. Nelson. It does. That's the way it's got to be. This is the way it has to be done, my friends. And I do agree on a lot of those areas. And this is why I always tell folks, even individuals like yourselves, can take the initiative on knowing these things, knowing your rights. Sometimes knowing some of the lingo, being self-contained the best you can. Now we got technology. We can make that happen, and trust me, it will drive some of these lawyers crazy, especially their elected servants. Drive them crazy. That's what. Oh yeah, I can't do anything about it. Yeah, you know what? You do nothing. That's why. Everyone's got to take a role on being proactive in these certain areas, and you know what? You'll better yourself and your comrades and your loved ones. And I said end a couple times, but that's it. So, all right, my friends, thank you for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or you want to send me something that's interesting and may want to check out, whatever you do, please address your correspondences with decorum. You can hit me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Tumblr, YouTube, Freedoms Network, Scene.lifeminds.com, FutureNet.club, or you can hit me on patreon.com/LuckyLuck3, which is 3 eyes all together. In addition, you can email me at LuckyLuck with the number 3 at gmail.com, or the encrypted ones, LuckyLuck number 03 at protonmail.com. Woo, all right. So, good Saturday. Hope you're having a good time. Once again, thank you for your time. But always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.